Today's lessons are two that we were left with. So how do you balance between secrecy and dawah? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ki jo journey thi, you guys all know, it was a journey which was a secret journey, correct? Or did everybody know about the journey? Sabko pata tha ya secretly gaye the? So he went secretly, right? But he had to also give dawah. So how do you balance secrecy? कि आप एक secret को maintain करके रखो, but at the same time you have to give dawah, right? So that's the important thing for us to understand today. So a lot of what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did was done in secrecy. He did this to preserve Islam and Muslims, but a balance needs to be made, right? Because जो दावा है, जो अल्लाह की तरफ आप लोगों को बुलाते हो, जो इस्लाम की तरफ लोगों को बुलाते हो, it's a public act, right? Normally, but if you remember in Makkah also, for many years it used to be secret. They used to meet in Darul Arqam. They used to go and talk there. They used to give dawah there. And then only after, some of the Sahaba became Muslim, right? Or like Umar Razillahu anhu, like Hamza Razillahu anhu, dawah became public. So that balance needs to be maintained. ठीक है? समझ आ रही है ना? So far, so good? Okay, good. So Hijrah ke andar we find both examples. Sometimes public, sometimes secrecy, right? So the first thing is Ibn Hasaq, rahmatullah alayhi, says that as I have been told, nobody knew the journey about the journey of Rasulullah except two people. One was Abu Bakr's family, Razilullah anhu, and the other was Ali bin Abi Talib, Razilullah anhu. So except these two Sahaba, nobody knew that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was secretly going. Ali Razilullah anhu ko kyun pata tha? Because like everybody told me last time, Hazrat Ali bin Abi Talib was the one who was lying in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's bed when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was leaving. याद है? So उनको पता था, and Abu Bakr की तो family को तो वैसे भी पता था because they went and met there. Correct? ठीक हो गया? So these were the only two families that knew about it. ठीक है? So Anas bin Malik says that Abu Bakr was a known man, so people would come to him and meet him. So Abu Bakr को हर कोई जानते थे. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam को हर कोई by face नहीं जानते थे. Everybody had heard about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they didn't know him by face, right? That who is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they would ask Abu Bakr कि आपके साथ who is this man with you, right? And Abu Bakr would give a very, very interesting answer. He would say that this man is my guide and he's showing me the path. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is right next to Abu Bakr Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ko Abu Bakr says that he's my guide and he's showing me the path. Now, obviously, people will obviously think that he's showing the path in the desert. Okay? But in actuality, what Abu Bakr meant was that he's showing me the path towards Akhirah. He's showing me the path towards Jannah. Okay? Towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he said it in a manner to protect the identity of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of his fear of endangering Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life. Okay? So this was basically to protect the identity of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ठीक हो गया? At the same time, Abu Bakr was not lying, right? झूठ नहीं बोल रहे थे वो. कह रहे थे, he's my guide. ठीक हो गया? So that's the case. But at the same time, a couple of things happened, right? So Muhammad sallallahu अच्छा एक दफा ये भी हुआ कि Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was approaching Medina, ठीक है? So when he was approaching Medina, there was a person called Buraidah Aslami. Now Buraidah Aslami came out and he tried to arrest the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. उनको आके गिरफ्तार करने लगा था. But then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam revealed himself. I am Muhammad bin Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib. I am the Rasul of Allah. I am the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he gave dawah to Buraidah. अब उस वक्त छुपाना का फायदा कोई नहीं है. And he gave dawah to Buraidah, and then Buraidah actually became Muslim. And not only did he become Muslim, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam की 19 battles के अंदर में से 16 में he took part. ठीक है? इसी तरह की एक और interesting कहानी है कि there were two people जो कि thieves थे, right? So Rasulullah came across two thieves. They were also given dawah and they became Muslim. उनका नाम क्या होता था? Al-Muhanan. Al-Muhanan means the dishonored ones. वो मतलब चोरी चकारी रॉबरी वगैरह करते थे. मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने उनको दावत दी and then they became Muslim, and उनको नाम रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने चेंज कर दिया. He said, you are not the dishonored ones, you are the honored ones. ठीक हो गया? अच्छा जी. So thus by these examples, the balance giving dawah and the secrecy can identify and can be understood. ठीक है? Rasulullah declared his identity when he thought कि इसका benefit होएगा, and he kept secrecy जब उनको था इसका benefit होएगा. So इसी तरह हमारी भी society के अंदर we should be very very wise around it. दीन का काम इंसान हर कोई कर सकता है, करना भी चाहिए, but you should always be mindful कि when is it when should it be done in a public manner and when should it be done in a private manner. ठीक है? Because अल्लाह तो सब देख रहे होते हैं. ठीक हो गया? All right. चलें जी, so let's move on to another very important lesson, right? Which is importance of the Muslim to be financially independent. जो मुसलमान होता है ना, मुसलमान, उसको financially independent होना चाहिए. ठीक है? This applies to everybody. जो बच्चे हैं उनको कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि फाइनेंशियली आहिस्ता इवेंचुअली व्हेन यू स्टडी बिजनेस करते हो आप या जॉब करते हो तो अपने आप को कोशिश करो फाइनेंशियली इंडिपेंडेंट करने की. बट स्कॉलर्स के लिए और इस्लामिक जो जिनका जहन दीनी है उनके लिए तो और भी ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. व्हाई? ठीक है, I'll give you an example. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Abu Bakr that he had been given permission for Hijrah, Abu Bakr was ready to join him. Abu Bakr told Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam कि मेरे पास 2 camels already तैयार हैं. ठीक है? And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said कि I will pay for them. ठीक है? So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wasn't financially dependent on अबू बकर सिद्दीक रजी अल्लाह तआला अन्हु. अबू बकर ने तैयारी करके रखी हुई थी रजी अल्लाह तआला अन्हु ने, लेकिन मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने कहा था क्या, आई विल पे फॉर इट, राइट? So that was the important thing that happened. So it's very important कि जब कोई स्कॉलर, कोई मौलवी साहब, कोई इमाम, कोई भी कोई भी is on somebody else's payroll, ठीक है, तब बड़ा मुश्किल होता है कि फिर आप कोई ऐसी चीज पे फतवा नहीं दे सकते हो, कोई ऐसी चीज नहीं आप बता सकते हो जो कि goes against that society, that goes against that government. So it's important कि आप financially independent हो. I mean, you take example our housing society, ठीक है. So ज़रार हाउसिंग सोसाइटी है, उसमें मैं इमाम हूँ, ठीक है, बट मैं तनख्वाह जो लेता हूँ वो मतलब कमेटी से लेता हूँ. अब फॉर एग्जांपल मस्जिद के बाहर डांस गाना ये वो सब कुछ हो रहा है. अब if I say के on my khutbah, if I say, oh look, this is not good what's happening in Zarar housing society because you know this is not Islamic and all of that, now the people will say मौलवी साहब तनख्वाह हमसे लेते हो, हमें कोई क्रिटिक करते हो. That is one way of looking at it. The other way is Zarar is independent financially. I'm not dependent on you financially. I can say whatever I want to say. ठीक है? So ये हमेशा याद रखो कि whoever wants to excel in Islamic work, dawa work, make sure you are financially independent. Make sure nobody holds your reins. कोई आपको control ना कर रहा हो. ठीक है? So when the scholar is dependent on the government या कोई और, then the scholar will be hesitant to do anything which goes against that society, that government, whatever, right? So hence it's important for them to be financially independent. इसी तरह आपको नजर आता होगा, for example, fatwas around interest, riba, not everybody can be very open, right? Because आप अगर कोई ऐसा फतवा दे दो जो किसी को पसंद ना आए, तो you might lose your job. But Islamic work is something that you should not be fearing losing your job. You should be brave, courageous, but उसके साथ साथ you have to be financially independent also. Without financial independence, आप लोग फंसोगे, मसला होएगा. ठीक हो गया? And he says one was the best day of my life and the other day was the worst day of my life. Okay? अच्छा जी. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is now coming into Medina. ठीक है? But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to stay with Banu Najjar because Banu Najjar were his relatives. Now, Rasulullah's great grandfather had married somebody from Medina. Does anybody know the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's great grandfather? So father was Abdullah, father was Abdullah, grandfather was Abdul Muttalib. Who was Abdul Muttalib's father? Maham, go ahead.
Was it Hashim?
Very good. Excellent. It was indeed Hashim. Okay. You remember Hashim? Unka title Hashim kyun tha? Does anybody remember why Hashim was known as Hashim?
I know.
Go ahead, Mariam.
It was because he fed people bread and I think it was soup.
Very good. Excellent. So Hashim was from Makkah and he was responsible for Saqaya, which was one of the jobs to do in Medina. In Makkah, which was to feed the pilgrims. Before Hashim, people used to only get soup. But during Hashim's time, he took soup, like Mariam said, mixed it with bread, and that was known as Hashr mixing, and that's why unka naam kya ban gaya? Hashim ban gaya. Okay? So we did this in the Makkah series. Good job. Hashim, the great-grandfather, had married a woman from Banu Najjar. Banu Najjar are from the Khazraj. So, Banu Najjar are the family of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. दूर पार की family है, लेकिन family है, right? So he is related to people from Medina. So just remember कि Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam कुरान में भी आता है ना that you have to take care of your kith and kin. अपने relatives का ख्याल रखो, अपने खून का जो इनके साथ इनका ख्याल रखो. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is very careful about these things. He could have stayed in any house in Medina, but he chose to live in which house? The family that he is related to. All right. Therefore, Abdul Muttalib's maternal uncles were from Medina. Abdul Muttalib was the grandfather of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What was another name for Abdul Muttalib? Does anybody remember? I'll give you a hint. People used to call him when he was born. Ji Mariam, go ahead.
I think it was about his hair, his white hair.
Yeah. What was he known as?
Shiva.
Shaiba. Very good. Mohammed, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
I was gonna say the same thing as Sheba.
Yeah, he was known as Shaiba. Shaiba ka matlab hota old man. So when Abdul Muttalib was born, he had white hair. Little bit of white hair. And that was why he was known as Shaiba. Acha ji. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked which house of Banu Najjar was closest to him. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radhiyallahu anhu responded that his house was closest to that position. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then stayed in the house of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radhiyallahu anhu. Ji Afnan. Wait. Story is coming. So Afnan is asking the question that some people tell the story that Rasulullah was sitting on a camel and the camel went in and sat somewhere and that's where he lived. Camel story is true, but not with respect to his house. Something else, which will come later. Huh? Correct.
Masjid.
Very good. So that was where the masjid was built. Yeah, good. Okay, ji. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to stay on the lower level, niche wali manzil mein, while Abu Ayyub Ansari was trying to convince him to settle on the upper floor. Okay? And the reason for this was because people visited Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam often, so it was more convenient for everyone for him to stay in the lower level. नीचे आएंगे, नीचे मिलेंगे, ऊपर आएंगे तो मतलब ऊपर लोगों को आना जाना लगा रहेगा तो वो मुश्किल हो जाता है. ठीक हो गया? Finally, Abu Ayyub Ansari radhiyallahu anhu agreed. Abu Ayyub Ansari said, we had a container filled with water that fell. मतलब ऊपर हज़रत अय्यूब अंसारी रह रहे हैं. एक दिन क्या हुआ? पानी गिर गया. ठीक है? Now जब पानी गिर गया तो we were afraid that the water would drop on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so we used our blankets and we soaked it up ताकि Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam को तकलीफ ना हो. And that was the only blanket that he and his wife had. Right? So this is the amount of generosity that they showed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said that we used the blanket to soak up all the water. And that night, अच्छा मदीना में ना ठंड होती है काफी, लेकिन उस but then that was the only blanket that they had, right? But they used it to soak up the water. Okay? And this is one of the examples of the generosity that the Sahaba radhiyallahu anha were willing to offer to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? Okay, so now Rasulullah is now in Medina. He's in the house of Abu Ayyub Ansari. Now he's slowly and gradually settling down. Okay? So let's do a few more slides because we have a bit of time. Yeah, we have 10 minutes. Okay. Acha ji, a Sahabi Zaid bin Sabit radhiyallahu anhu says the first gift made to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam after he took up residence in the house of Abu Ayyub was something that I brought him. So Zaid bin Sabit was one of the Sahaba. He brought it. It was a big wooden bowl filled with bread crumbled with milk and butter. So bread crumbled with milk and butter. And he said कि ये मेरी अम्मी ने आपके लिए specially बनवाया. ठीक है? So I mean, this is just a picture. I mean, किस तरह की उसकी शक्ल होगी. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commented, "May Allah bless her." Then he called over his companions, and they all ate. So, उनको gift आया किस चीज का? खाने का. So similarly, हमारे culture के अंदर भी होना चाहिए कि if somebody comes new in the neighborhood, या वैसे भी अगर new भी नहीं है ना, we should make sure that we keep sharing, sending food and giving food as well. Acha ji. Then a wooden bowl came from Saad bin Ubadah. He was one of the Ansars, one of the leaders of the Ansars. And it was bread mixed with meat gravy. So pehle kya aaya? It was bread mixed with butter and milk. Now it is meat gravy mixed with meat gravy. ठीक है? Zaid bin Sabit radhiyallahu anhu says not an even went by without there being at the door of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam 3 or 4 people who would come one after another, all carrying food. ठीक है? So everybody used to be coming to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's house, kabhi 3 log, kabhi 4 log, and they would all be bringing what? They would all be bringing food for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ठीक हो गया? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam now remained in the home of Abu Ayyub Ansari for how many days? 7 months he stayed in the house of Hazrat Ayyub Ansari radhiyallahu anhu. So the long time. Okay? These were mostly poor people who were giving up their food for Messenger of Allah. Now these are not very rich people. जो बार-बार खाना लेकर आ रहे हैं, they're not very rich people. ठीक है? They're all people who are very poor, right? Once I think I went on a Jamaat to one of these frontier के areas में ना. So उस दिन हम फजर के बाद मस्जिद में ही बैठे हुए थे. Now फजर के मस्जिद के बाद, you know, people found out कि चीज हमें, you know, we've come for dawah and we've come in the path of Allah. Now somebody brought one small paratha, another person brought something else. So थोड़ा करके बहुत सारा खाना आ गया. But हर कोई अपनी इस्तिताद के हिसाब से लेकर आया. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't look at the quantity. Allah looks at the quality of your niyat, your sincerity. So when you're spending in the path of Allah, Allah doesn't care if you spend ₹1 million or 1 rupee or 10 rupees. It is basically your ikhlas. ठीक है? अच्छा जी, let's keep moving. अच्छा जी, फिर क्या हुआ? A few young girls went out on the streets and they were singing, "We are the girls of Banu Najjar. How wonderful if Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam were our neighbor." Now everybody wanted Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be their neighbor. And these girls are outside, they're singing, they're so happy, right? So what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? This was the relationship of the people of Medina and Rasulullah. They loved him, right? And Allah Azza wa Jal had chosen the Ansar to be the Ansar of Rasulullah. Now the Ansar were special people. बाद में जाके हम Ansar के फज़ाइल सुनेंगे. But the Ansar were special people. So towards the end of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life, he said, if it wasn't for Hijrah, I would consider myself to be a member of Al-Ansar. कि अगर मैं मक्का में born ना हुआ होता और हिजरत ना की होती, तो because the Ansar was such highly valuable, sacred, honorable people that I would think of myself as a person from the Ansar. ठीक हो गया? Now, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then said, Allah knows that my heart loves you all. ठीक है? So everybody is giving him a very warm welcome. ठीक हो गया? अच्छा जी, we're going to do another slide because we just have a bit of time, and then inshallah we'll close as well. अच्छा जी, so now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has entered Medina. ठीक है? Medina में so political situation क्या थी? Let's understand that. What do I mean by political situation? What does that mean? What does a political situation mean? Does anybody know? Or let me ask you a simpler question. You see this picture? Okay, go ahead, Arisha.
I think it means how the situation is managed and by who it was being managed.
Arisha, there's a bit of an echo. Can you speak up again?
I think it means how there's like management happening and who's in control.
Correct. So it says कि who's in control. Ji, Afnan. Okay. Landscape की बात कर रहे हो आप. अच्छा, simpler question मैं आपसे पूछता हूँ. What's the name of this mountain that you see in this picture? Does anybody know? Oh, Hafiz Saab got it right. Well done. Okay, ji. So this was the map of Medina that you guys have seen a bit before in our Makkah series. ठीक है? That I shared with you. Now, it's important that there were 5 tribes living in Medina. 3 of them were Jewish and 2 were Arab. ठीक है? So there were a total of how many tribes? 5 tribes. Okay? 2 Arab tribes and 3 Jewish tribes. Okay? Yes, Musa, go ahead.
Yes, so the three Jewish tribes were Banu Qurayza,
Musa,
Banu
we're
Qurayza.
going to talk about that in a bit. Did you have a question at this point? Question agar
No.
hai to bata do, baki we're going to go through this now.
No.
Yeah, okay, good, excellent. But you're right. There were 3 Jewish tribes. The 3 Jewish tribes were Banu Nazir, Banu Qurayza, and Banu Qanaqwa. ठीक है? And अब इनके one के बात करते हैं. ठीक है? So Banu Qanaqwa lived in the center of Medina. So these people were sitting in the center of Medina. So Medina is like surrounded by mountains. ठीक है? And then in the center of Banu was Banu Koneka, the marketplace. They had a business of jewelry. They were previously settled in the outskirts of Medina, but were driven out by war between them and the Jews. So ये जो थे outskirts में थे, but then they were driven out because of the war that they had with other Jewish tribes. ठीक है? So this is where Banu Koneka was. Banu Nazir and Banu Qurayza lived in forts on the outskirts of Medina. So outskirts of Medina क्या थी? These are the outskirts of Medina that you can see. यहाँ Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam की eventually masjid बनी थी. And this was the place where Banu Qurayza and Banu Nazir were. और ये जो मैंने trees बनाए हुए हैं यहाँ, these are all date palm trees. ठीक हो गया? They had about 59 fortresses in which they lived. So 59 fortresses थे. Fortress means small forts. ठीक है? And they had a fighting force of about 2,000 people. So अच्छी खासी powerful tribes थी ये. ठीक हो गया? Any questions so far? No questions? Okay, we'll keep going. The two Arab tribes were Al-Aus and Al-Khazraj. ठीक है? Al-Aus जो है वो सारी blue वाले circles हैं, the ones that you can see. जाशम आपको नजर आ रहा है? ठीक है? And then these were the pinkish ones are all Al-Aus. ठीक है? So Aus जो थे आप देख सकते हो थोड़ा सा mountains के पास रहते थे, and then Al-Khazraj were mostly in and around Medina. ठीक है? अच्छा जी. Then Aus and Al-Khazraj has a fighting force of 4,000. So Jews की कितनी fighting force थी? 2,000. Aus और Khazraj की कितनी fighting force थी? 4,000. ठीक है? So the Arab tribes were stronger than the Jewish tribes. ठीक है? One tribe lived in the north while the other lived towards the south inside Medina. So Aus was living in the north, Khazraj was living in the south. ये quiz में आएगा. ठीक है? So Medina was sort of a city full of many villages with areas specified for each tribe. So हर जगह ने अपने अपना किया होता. So even अगर आप ये देखोगे ना, so this is the whole tribe of Banu Qurayza, of Khazraj, but it had 4 different clans: Banu Saada, Banu Al Harith, Banu this, Banu that. ठीक है? So these were all tribes, but हर जगह अपनी अपनी इन्होंने की हुई थी. So it was a cosmopolitan, multicultural sort of a city. ठीक है? अच्छा, अब livelihood क्या था उनका? ठीक है? So the livelihood of the people of Medina was dependent on agriculture. So it was a settled place. It was not mountainous like Makkah. Medina was flat. Medina was also an oasis. उधर पानी भी होता था. And because of water, because of flat land, relatively fertile, they used to be dependent on agriculture. ठीक है? They had palm groves for which the farmers would need money throughout the year until the time of harvest. Now, जो farmer होता है, farmer की जो sale होती है, आप में से किसी का farming background है? Any of you who have farming backgrounds? ठीक है? अफनान का है, शायान का है. So क्या होता है farming में? आपकी जो sales होती हैं, अरीशा का है. So sales होती हैं वो हर वक्त होती रहती हैं, season के हिसाब से होती हैं. हर फसल के साथ होती है. So अगर आप for example summers के अंदर आप क्या करते हो? Summers के अंदर आप जब राइस कट जाती है तो you start planting for wheat. अब आपने उसके लिए प्लाव भी करना है, आपने फर्टिलाइजर भी डालना है, आपने पानी भी करना है, आपने बीज भी डालना है. करते 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 जाके कब फसल कटती है? अप्रैल में कटती है, 6 महीने के बाद. करेक्ट? सो 6 महीने आपको पूरा का पूरा लगता है. आपकी पेमेंट कब आती है? 6 मंथ्स के बाद. बट फार्मर को पैसे तो चाहिए होते हैं उसके दरमियान. सो मदीना में क्या हो रहा था कि द औस एंड द खजरज ये फार्मर्स थे और फार्मर्स को पैसे चाहिए होते हैं. सो दे नीडेड मनी थ्रू आउट द ईयर. ठीक है? The Jewish tribes would lend the Arabs money who would charge interest on the loan. Now the Jewish tribes in Medina, again they were controlling the capital. पैसे उनके पास थे और वो पैसा आगे उधार देते थे और वो पैसे के ऊपर सूद डालते थे. ना सूद बहुत बड़ी लानत है. ठीक है? इसलिए आज की सोसाइटी में भी इस्लाम is vehemently against सूद. बिकॉज सूद क्या होता है? You're giving 100 rupees, मुझे 50 वापस करो, नहीं सॉरी 100 वापस करो, उस पर 50 और दो. So somebody is making money on money. Now when you make money on money, you are अगले बंदे को आप oppress कर रहे हो. कोई मजबूरी से पैसे ले रहा है ना आपसे. ठीक है? अच्छा, मैं आता हूँ आपके पास. The Jewish tribes would lend money to the Arabs who would charge interest on the loans. This created conflict of bitter feelings between the Arabs and the Jews. Now obviously अब आपने 100 लिया, उस पर 150 वापस करना है, कल को 150 लिया, उस पर 300 वापस करना है, तो वो आपको चूस रहे होते थे इस तरह. ठीक है? So it was basically, that's why interest is such a bad thing. This was the situation prior to the advent of Islam. So Islam के आने से पहले के ये हालात थे. ठीक हो गया? When Islam came, Medina had Muslims. अच्छा उस वक्त क्या क्या था उस वक्त? So Medina had Muslims, pagans भी थे, because also Khazraj की कुछ tribes अभी convert नहीं हुई थी. They were originally what? Mushrikeen, जिसको English में क्या कहते हैं? Pagans. And Jews. So they were different ethnic groups. सारे के सारे different ethnic groups थे. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to be very careful while dealing with these people. So बहुत multicultural society. Jews आपको, you should know कि Quran addresses the Jews as the people of the book. Ahle kitab. Which kitab did the Jews have? Which book did
Torah.
they had? The Torah, right? And the Torah was revealed to which prophet?
Musa alayhi salam.
Very good, Musa. Well done. But did the Torah that was with the Jews of Medina, was that in its original form, or had it been corrupted? Corrupted. So they were the people of the book.
Except
They were the people of the Torah, but the Torah had been changed. It was not in its original form. So इधर आपके पास एक Jewish society जो कहती है कि जी हम तो 3-4 हजार पुरानी society है. And then you have pagans, and then you have Muslims. And Muslims के भी दो parts हो गए हैं. You have the Muhajirin, and then you have the Ansar. ठीक हो गया? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to navigate through all of this. आप लोगों को याद है the first day I told you कि वो 100 most influential की list में top पे कौन है? तो ये ऐसे मजाक से नहीं है. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to do a lot of hard work to make sure कि इतनी animosity, इतनी जंगों के दरमियान, इतनी सबको उन्होंने unite किया, अल्लाह से जोड़ा, and then Islam spread over the entire world. ठीक है? So we will now stop here, and the next chapter is very, very interesting. The next chapter is actually the establishment of the Islamic State.